So you have this new student on your caseload who has ADHD, and here's how we're going to accommodate them. Give them preferential seating. Yeah, that's pretty much all I was ever told about supporting my students with ADHD, and that ain't it, folks. Welcome back to my channel. I am a former high school English teacher of 13 long years, and I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in the fields of English and education. So I'm a relatively educated person. I have a lot of experience, and I can't believe that it took until I became a parent of a presenting ADHD child and I left the classroom. And when these two things happened, right, my son started to grow up, I left the classroom for a lot of reasons that were unrelated to teaching. They were personal and part of my family life. I was in my mid-30s when I started to finally understand, and I should say start to understand what ADHD really is and what it actually means in a classroom. And I wanted to make this video today not as a psychiatrist, a psychologist. I am none of those things. I am not qualified to diagnose or even talk about really what ADHD is or looks like. I am not an expert. What I know, I have learned through experience. And what I know also is from the point of view of being both a teacher and a mom. And I wanted to share this video with you today because I would have loved to have found a video like this in the early days of kind of trying to figure out what was going on with me, what was going on with my son, and having been fed lines about this world of ADHD that just weren't actually my experience. I'm not going to say that they aren't true, but they weren't the experience that I expected. And I think it's important to know that there's a lot we don't know. And so that's what this video is going to be all about, is what I would have done differently in the classroom and what I will do differently when I head back to the classroom one day. And I hope that this helps you navigate that world. Okay, so let's talk about what I actually learned about neurodiversity in undergrad, because maybe this is similar to you. I learned about it in broad strokes. I feel like there was maybe one class about neurodiversity, maybe it was sprinkled into other classes, but I certainly cannot pinpoint coursework specifically in neurodiversity and students. I wasn't a special education major, so most of my coursework, I feel like it was very broad strokesy. I did learn about what an IEP is. I never saw one. I never looked at one, even in student teaching. And I went to my undergrad in the early 2000s. I'm not that ancient here. And I never ever saw an IEP until my first day of teaching in my own classroom. And I was handed it on paper. It was before they were even digital. I was handed the IEP and said, actually not one, I was handed a stack of IEPs. So I've worked with students with IEPs my whole career. And I was just kind of handed it and then told to handle it. So that was that. And then in undergrad, I feel like we also learned some legal stuff. We knew about state laws and that we were required to follow the IEP, but really, that's it. I hope that your experience was a little bit more varied and in-depth than mine, but that's it, folks. And what I really saw in those early years, and even now, how neurodiversity is being presented to non-special education teachers. So gen ed teachers, I think, again, I am very nervous making this video because I do not want to overgeneralize. I am just speaking from my experience. And if I missed something, then that's on me. But as a general education teacher, so much of what I was given in terms of tools and understanding neurodiversity was very generic, right? Very surface level. I've been walked through accommodations and goals, but never really part of the process of understanding how they work, why they work. Even the accommodations and goals that I really sat down and worked with my co-teacher on, and like as I got older and I was really more aware of this, even she felt kind of handcuffed by the legal system and, versus responding to the actual child and human in front of her. So I can remember that frustration there. I've been to dozens and dozens of IEP meetings, which some were great, some were not. They were definitely not all the same. And they definitely didn't really help me as a teacher support that child, other than the fact that it was really good to see that child in the context of the parents and other teachers in the room. Like the meeting itself was great, but I don't know that it really helped me understand neurodiversity differently. And that was a bummer. It gave me a few angles into that particular child, but nothing that I could really apply to the way that I supported even more of my students that were neurodivergent. And then I feel like the PD that was handed to us most often was differentiation. Differentiate. Just differentiate. Differentiate. Which I did. I did to the best of my ability. And I made a lot of accommodations and I followed all of the laws. But I don't know that I really ever got a chance to understand, especially ADHD, which was by far and away the most common 504 or IEP diagnosis that I saw in my classroom. And not once did I get professional development on what ADHD looks like, what it is, and how it works, and how to accommodate it in the classroom, things like that. Never, ever, 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 ever. So there's a lot that I know now. There's a lot that I know now. Like I said earlier in the video, I am absolutely presenting a lot of ADHD symptoms, which another way to talk about that would be to say that I struggle with executive functioning. Executive functioning are the skills needed to make decisions, to organize, to move forward with those decisions once you've made them. It's a lot about like the central command system staying on track. And I've always thought that I was really good at that. I'm a very ambitious person. I accomplish a lot of things. But I think what was being conflated for me was my personality, which is an Enneagram 3. I am achievement driven and oriented. But the way that I function in that world is not great because it's very, very hard for me to stick to a plan, stick to a routine. Like I dream of them. I see them. I watch 4,000 hours of YouTube videos on routines. I design systems. I begin things. And I almost always crash. I crash and burn. Consistency is extremely difficult for me in a way that it's hard for a lot of people, but for me, it's debilitating. Like when I'm inconsistent, I'm off. I am off. I'm done. Like I have given up. I have completely stopped trying to even achieve that thing. And then I redesign a whole new system from scratch, right? These are things for me that are executive functioning struggles. My home, you will never see another angle on this camera. Okay. I have been struggling my whole life to continue to keep my space tidy and organized. I don't function well with it messy, but I also don't possess yet. I'm in therapy for this. I am struggling to find the skills and the systems that actually work for me, because the ones that I was given, the ones that I've learned are behaviors and things that work well for people that can executive function well, right? I can't do that well yet. So that's part of my experience, right? And I think that I didn't recognize it because I was in school. I was a teacher. And guess what? When I was a kid in school, I didn't struggle because I was achievement oriented. So for me, one of the things about ADHD that I didn't know is that a lot of ADHDers do something called hyperfixation. When they are in the zone of the dopamine, the things that they absolutely love, I can be hyper fixated on that thing. So in school, I loved school. I loved getting positive feedback from teachers. I loved having friends that were also high achievers. And we thrived on the dopamine seeking adrenaline rush of being good students. And and I was motivated to become a teacher. So even in college, I loved my classes. I really desperately wanted to become a teacher. And so all of these things were kind of already in place for me. So they disguised or helped me cope through a lot of those struggles because I just barreled through. I gritted my teeth and I pushed as hard as I could. And then when I started teaching, same thing, my classroom, everyone would always comment on my classroom being such a disaster. It was the tornado, but it was also the place with like so much love and passion and joy. And I really tried to maintain it, but I've written blog posts about how I couldn't maintain a classroom library. It was too stressful for me to maintain a classroom library, write lesson plans, do all these things because the library would get messy at the end of the day, right? Things would get out of order. And like, just thinking about it stresses me out. But like, I love books. And wanting to have a beautiful, organized library, like I'd love that. I know you can't really see very well here, but even this situation here, it's not great. ADHD looks different on everyone. That's, I think, the moral of the little rant that I'm on. And just because I was high achieving and did well in school, and I was a female, ADHD was overlooked. It was never red flagged for me. And so I left the classroom. I became a full-time professional development consultant. I now travel around the world and present professional development to schools. I support teachers. I train teachers on inquiry-based, essential question-driven learning. And I love what I do, and I love it when I'm in the zone and I'm with teachers. But when I'm home, planning, organizing, there are no bells going off. I don't have a boss yelling at me to turn in something. I don't have students waiting for me at a certain time. All of these things I was really looking forward to because I was feeling very shackled by school, right? At sometimes, I'm a free spirit too. I love to have some freedom. This is something that I am working on every single day, managing myself. She's not nice to me sometimes, and it's very, very, very hard. And when I finally started getting to the bottom of it, it's because of these executive functioning skills that I lack. And not even that I should have learned them, but my brain just doesn't do them. Now, maybe with medication, my brain would do them better. We're on that journey right now, but I think that that's part of this aha moment that I had with ADHD is it's not about learning to do better or even it is about learning to cope, but coping skills take a long time because they're not one size fits all. Another thing I learned about ADHD is that most ADHDers, or I should just say me, I don't really know if this is for most people, but a lot of people with ADHD don't understand why something is hard for them. Because why is it hard for me to empty the dishwasher every single morning? Why is that hard for me? I don't know. This is a very simple task. Like, why is that hard for me? Why is it hard for me to remember every single night to brush my teeth? Like these are not on the surface difficult things. And so it's hard to not beat yourself up, right? I know for me, ADHD is something that is helping me understand I don't need to be so hard on myself. I need to understand how my brain works. And that is what's going to help me overcome and cope and move forward with a happy, healthy, hygienic, mostly kind of sort of organized life. I think another thing about ADHD that I know now is that a lot of symptoms are internalized, right? I think I'm the perfect example of that. My symptoms and like my red flags, what people would have normally seen and said, ooh, I think she might need a little bit of help. A lot of times that stuff can be internalized and not visible on the outside. Hyperactivity is not always something that has to be part of ADHD. ADHD is its own little spectrum. And I think, again, what was I told about ADHD? Oh, it's about kids are going to be bouncing off the walls. They can't sit still. They're really fidgety. Well, that some versions of ADHD do look like that, but others are inattentive. Others are more about being frozen and stuck, and all of that hyperactivity is going on in here. And I know that feeling of the racing, and like part of that probably is anxiety too, but the disorganization of my brain, like I'm living in the same mess I'm living in a mess that no one can see, and it's brutal. And like I said earlier, not all ADHDers struggle in school. A lot of them don't. A lot of people with ADHD do very well in school. And I think the final thing that really I didn't understand was how powerful dopamine is, especially for me. I can now like trace my day looking at my dopamine chase, right? Like my search for dopamine, and how task avoidant I am of things that are not at all fulfilling to me. And that over time, right, over a lifetime adds up. And without being aware of it has really given me a lot of work to do. Okay, so let's get really specific about the things. I have a list of things that I would do differently in the classroom. I did have to write down my list. So if I'm looking at my computer, I need to make sure that I give you this whole list here, because I think a lot of these things are easy. They're not like going to cost you a lot of time or money to implement. And I think that they're genuine, right? They're coming from my heart. They're coming from my own child, and like what I've learned through the 0 to kindergarten. It's been a lot. So here are some things that I would do differently. Number one, I would be very lenient with my students, especially my students with IEPs in ADHD, about breaks. We have to build up trust for that to be possible. The classroom community needs to be a priority, as always, but breaks and having the space to get up, walk around, leave the room, come back to reset is so vital. Again, it sounds really basic. Doesn't cost you anything, but it does mean that we need to be intentional about building up trust with these students and really letting them know that, hey, if you need a break, take one, right? And getting to the point where maybe they just kind of leave something on your desk just to let you know that they're taking their break. Maybe eventually they can just take it without having to communicate it with you any other way. But that's so important. And just trusting that the student is doing it to help themselves. Okay, I would also create in my room, or if not possible, I would ask some teachers in my hallway to see if we can find a space for de-escalation and regulation. This comes to me especially from watching my own child, and just watching how effective sensory rooms have been at the early elementary level. Calming rooms, calming corners, a space, whatever that looks like in your classroom. So whether maybe you're an elementary school teacher, maybe you're middle school, maybe you're high school. My experience is high school, and like having a calming corner, we probably wouldn't call it that, but having a space in the room, even if it's a private conversation, like I don't necessarily need to label it, right? I don't need to be like, welcome to the calming corner, and like make a big deal about it. But I can have a cabinet with a drawer with some fidgets that my kids who need them know where it is and can go get it when they need it. I can have a corner of my room that has a chair and a reading lamp and a pillow. And that is a place where a certain child, like when they're feeling dysregulated, can go. Again, like there's kind of this like trust that we build up with our students and a communication that we have with them so that they know when they need it, it's there. We don't need to announce it to everyone. We just need to make sure that the students who need it know it's there and can access it when they need it. That would be really a powerful moment. It depends on what the classroom looks like and what your space situation is. Again, like even if that is, I did have a year where I was kind of traveling, and I hadn't fully thought out the idea that I'm sharing with you now, but I do remember one thing that worked really well for us is we always knew during a specific class period whose rooms were free, whose rooms were empty. So I knew that like during third hour, right, the room next door was just a teacher on her prep. So I knew when I had a troubled student or I had an issue or I needed to de-escalate something, that there was a room where that child could go. There would be another adult, but like there would be nobody else. And they could kind of calm down. They could, right, get themselves set. And And we had this, and we did this for each other, depending on, right, the class period and who was free. That is the same idea as having a calming corner, but that's like the big kid version. Okay, I would also think about some seating chart hacks. A lot of IEPs will tell you preferential seating, but then that's it. Or they'll say seat next to the teacher or close to the teacher. So I think that takes a little bit, again, of trust and conversation with the student, because sometimes close to the teacher is not actually all that helpful. Sometimes the child needs to be close to the back because they need to be able to get in and out the door, right? Maybe they're the kind of child who needs to take a lot of breaks. So maybe I want that kid to be closer to the door. If they're sitting next to me and constantly getting up to go take a break, that's going to be very, very distracting and maybe even a little embarrassing for that kid. So I'm not telling you to question the IEPs that you're given, but I am telling you to talk to case managers and talk to the child individually, and that this kind of will evolve over the school year, right? On day one, of course, like do what you think is best because it's day one, who knows? But as things go, think about seating based on your actual physical room. Where does this student need to be the most productive and get access to what they need? It really depends, and close to the front and close to the teacher. It also depends on your classroom. Like my students were not sitting in rows. They weren't sitting in rows. So close to the teacher was a lot of them because I was constantly moving. Shocker. I never sat at my desk and I never presented from the front. I almost always presented from the back of the room. I liked to stand in the back of the room and see everyone and see the front and see the whole room. I liked to see it from the back. So, right. So take that for what you will, because seating is complicated, and seating also is something that changes over time. So keep your eye on that. Try calm strips. If a child is kind of a fidgety type of ADHD, I love calm strips. They're really inexpensive. I'll link some in the description box below. I do, my kindergartner right now, he does use these and he loves them, but they're just textured Band-Aids. Oh, they're thicker than Band-Aids, but they have a gentle like adhesive on the back. And then on the front is, you can kind of just rub them like this. I should have brought one here. Maybe I'll find one for you later, but you just kind of rub on them and they give like this really cool sensory feeling to the fingertips. You can attach them to the inside of a desk, the top of a desk, to a notebook, a planner. You can get them in like keychain format for an individual student, but they're incredibly inexpensive. And if they walk away, they walk away. Like that's fine. Like give them to your students to put on their English folder, their whatever class you're teaching, give it to them. You don't even need to worry about keeping track of it. Just give it away. Some of them are not textured, but they're smooth and they give your directions for your fingers to move. So like you might be moving your finger in a figure 8. It's just a nice way to keep your body moving while trying to concentrate on some instruction, because some instruction is going to be direct instruction. There are times when we can't always be moving and learning. Sometimes there needs to be sit still learning. So for those times, those calm strips could be very, very helpful. Every teacher should read the book Differently Wired. I'm linking it below for you right now. This book completely changed how I see neurodivergency in school and neurodivergency as a parent. And I read it and I wasn't totally crying, but I was heartbroken, wishing that I would have had that tool with me in my heart and in my head when I was teaching in the classroom. Differently Wired, it will change everything. Another idea that would be something that really helps me and helps my son, is a technique called body doubling. So body doubling is when you are right alongside the student and it's kind of like, I do, you do, I do, you do, I do, you do, I do, you. Like you are doubling, right? You're doing the exact same task together. So as an adult, right, I'm going to tell you, this is the truth. When I'm having a really hard time getting my house cleaned, I call my friend Kirsten, and Kirsten comes over, and sometimes she doesn't even clean with me. Sometimes she sits on the couch and she tells me what to do. She says, okay, Amanda, I want you to start in the kitchen. Start with cleaning out the sink, do all the dishes and load the dishwasher. And then I find, something in the sink that belongs in the bathroom. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go put this in the bathroom. She's like, she stops me and she says, leave it on the counter. You're going to finish everything in the sink and do not move. And I'm like, okay. And I don't. And I finished the sink. I finished the dishwasher. She's like, did you find anything else that needs to go to another home? And I said, yes. And then we really talk like this to each other. And it sounds ridiculous, but it's so helpful because if I'm here alone, you better believe I went to the bathroom and I dropped off that thing. And then I found another thing. And then that took me to the bedroom. And then in the bedroom, I found a book that I've been dying to read. And so I lay down and I read my book for a little while. And then all of a sudden it's 2:00. It's time to pick up my kids. And I've washed 3 cups and read 17 chapters of a book. And an entire day is gone. So body doubling is having another person to assist with the task, but will keep that person on track. So if it can't be you, the teacher, that's a wonderful job for a co-teacher. That's a wonderful job for early finishers. Maybe if your student who's struggling has a good friend in that class, maybe they should work together. Will that friend be able to say like, okay, first we're gonna write our claim. Let's write our claim. I wrote my claim. What's your claim? Okay, cool. We got our claims done. I know you have that type A student who loves organization. Can that student work with your other student who really just needs help just following, the order, not doing the work? I bet your ADHD student can do the work fine, but your ADHD student got to claim and then started thinking about bananas and then is like, what time is lunch? And oh man, I think I forgot my lunch today. Oh my gosh, I think I also forgot my math homework. And then 20 minutes have gone by. And it's not that they can't do the claim writing. It's that's what's happening. You might not even see it, right? It's happening up here. So do they have a body double partner who can just do that? They don't even need to be masters of the content. They just need to help pull through those step-by-step kinds of things. And you need to give yourself a break, because if you're thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, how can I help this child? I gave them clear steps. Sometimes even clear steps is not enough to break up the clutter that's going on up here. It's crazy. It's crazy. I wish you could come inside because I'm glad you can't come inside. Okay, another trick that I use sporadically but would use consistently is really using anchor charts. I don't think high school teachers use them very often. They seem to be kind of stigmatized to the elementary school, middle school realm. Citation, which is a terrible example because it's so stupid and pointless. But I know that 1 is do this, 2 is do this, 3 is do this, 4 is do this. When I do a rhetorical analysis, we use Space Cat. I love to use Space Cat. It tells my students where to start. Start with the triangle, Speaker, purpose. Oh my gosh, space. SP, speaker, purpose, audience, C, context, E, exigence. I know, this acronym is going to help me focus on the rhetorical triangle, the rhetorical situation. What is happening right now? Then I know I can move into choices, appeals, and tone. I can then work on that. For more about rhetorical analysis, I'll also link that. That is not the purpose of this video, but I have a lot of work on rhetorical analysis that I can link for you. But anchor charts like that, and then displaying it. Don't just tell them what Space Cat is. Make a Space Cat poster. Put it on the wall, refer to it regularly so that when your students who are struggling with executive functioning get lost, they've been thinking about speakers forever. They're like, oh my gosh, the speakers in my car, they're really loud. They're awesome. I think after school, I want to go to get ice cream. Send them back to the poster. What comes next? Okay, purpose, P, So giving them places to check back and get back in order of where they need to be is so helpful. I think I put it on handouts. I know I put it on handouts. Did I make a poster and put it on the wall? No. Easy. Another thing that is really important too is repeating directions, but doing it patiently with empathy, compassion, and not frustration. I know that that's so much easier said than done. I know it because I know it as the parent of a 6-year-old and I know it as the teacher of teenagers. It is really hard to be patient with giving directions, especially when you know that they were not paying attention in the first place. So we don't need to always, not every situation warrants this, but for the most part, if we can lead with compassion and genuinely feeling like, okay, I really think that the student got lost in the directions, I can repeat them again. You might even consider giving the directions more spread out. So I talk about this in like what I do called cafe mode. If I'm doing a cafe mode day, usually it's a work day, but my work days are typically pretty structured. So in the first half of the day, we'll do our bell ringer. And then if we're going to have work time, there's one very specific task that's happening. So I announce the task, right? The step, right? The direction. For the next 10 minutes, we are going to read our research and make bullet point notes on our note cards for this research project, right? So right now you should be reading and bullet pointing. Reading and bullet pointing. There's nothing else happening in this 10-minute period. When 10 minutes is up, share with a partner what you bullet pointed from your reading. Now it's the next 10 minutes. Now you're moving on to Article B. Article B, you're gonna read it and take bullet point notes. Just stay on Article B. So it kind of helps if our directions are broken up as well, rather than saying, you have 50 minutes to read all your articles and take all your notes. You might be successful with that with some classes, but students with ADHD and students who have executive functioning struggles would definitely benefit, as much as it kind of feels like hand-holding and it feels like babysitting. If we can take space away from that language and think about executive functioning, all they need is the support to get through the task. It's not, if you're supporting them with the task, you're not making it less rigorous or not academically challenging. Whether they read for 50 minutes and take notes or they read in 10-minute periods on different pieces, that does not change how difficult the task is. The reading is still hard. They're still taking their own notes. They're still coming to their own conclusions and writing claims. But you are taking the structural pressure of a free time. That's pressure for a kid with ADHD. Instead of doing that, you're giving them scaffolds. You're giving them supports that don't cost you anything, except for maybe just a little reflection on, right, how we perceive neurotypical students and neurodivergent students, right? Think about that. I also recommend, if this is something that you are facing either yourself or you are recognizing more and more in students, there are some wonderful coaches and professionals that I follow in social media world, right? You can also talk to your own like clinical providers if you want to talk to them as well. But I feel like a lot of ADHD coaches and people on the internet have wonderful strategies to try, right? You don't need to have diagnoses. You don't need to have this. P.S. A lot of coping strategies and tools are helpful for all kids, not just kids with ADHD. So I would definitely recommend following these people here. I'm going to share them with you below because they have really, really helped me in my own journey and just thinking about kids and school and all of the above. And I am going to wrap this up. This was a long one, but I hope it was helpful to you. I hope it was reflective for you. And if you don't learn anything else from today, it is lead with compassion and try to remember that there's a lot we missed in undergrad. There's a lot we didn't learn. The world is changing, and that a diagnosis is not a label that we slap on kids. A diagnosis or a term like ADHD is something that's supposed to give us more information about what can be helpful to our children and their success and their comfort and their joy, and building a space for them that feels safe and like the best place for them to learn. I know that their parents will be grateful and just humbled if a teacher was able to care for my kid like this, and already is. His kindergarten teacher is already like this. But the older kids get, I know in high school, the less we are, we have a lot of demands. Let's just say that. We have a lot of demands on our shoulders. There's a lot to breathe through, think through, and do. And so hopefully these little tips will help you lead with compassion and try to help your kids just a little bit more each day. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.